Get in, losers. We're going speculating.
Let's recap. Prologue. B. Skull. The night before the Emperor's murder. Harold's attack. You prepare to die. Stabbed with your own rapier.
Parados. Broken Ninth House Skull. 14 months before the Emperor's murder. Ortis, Cavalier, and Poet. Harrow is insane. The body speaks.
What was your experience? Can you remember what your experience was the first time you read this prologue in Parados?
I mean, I think I've said this before. Like, my experience of reading Harrow was that I read Gideon and pretty immediately launched into Harrow. And I read Harrow and just, like, gobbled it up. So I, like, read Harrow in, like, probably, 4 days or something ridiculous, right? And so I never... If I'm really enjoying a book, I don't let myself sit with it and think about it and speculating. I'm just like, what's happening next? What's happening next? What's happening next? Which means that by the time that I got to Harrow and you get to the end, you're like, well, wait a sec. What the fuck was going on at the beginning? I actually want to read it and understand it this time. And so I was like, I literally had the feeling like it was on a Kindle, so it wasn't a physical book, but I literally had the feeling of like, I read the last page and then
flip to the first page.
Okay, so I'm flipping to page 1. And I was like, except you can't actually do that. Like, that just feels a little too obsessive. So what we're going to do instead is that I know that there's audiobook versions. So what I did instead of like literally turning to page 1 and rereading the book immediately again, I got introduced. That was my first introduction to Moira Quirk. And that was actually my first thing that actually made me start enjoying audiobooks at all.
She's so fucking good. Yeah. We collectively have a crush on Moira Quirk.
Yeah, we collectively do. I thought that it was too insane to literally go back to page 1, but it wasn't too insane. I remember I literally listened to the book over the next 2 days. So I spent like a whole week just like completely and totally immersed in Harrow and doing nothing but
hilarious.
Harrow.
You literally read through Harrow twice in a week. That's delightful, yes. And I love that. So when I read it the first time, it drives me nuts the way people who have mental disorders are depicted in any media, because they're so often written by people who don't have mental disorders, and it's just inaccurate. Like, my complaint is not about the stigma. My complaint is about the accuracy. And so when you read something like this, I loved that it was in second person because it forces you to feel like you're inside of her mind. And part of the thing about being insane, especially when you're aware you're insane, and I also want to be clear, like, so what I have is different, right? Like, I occasionally will have mild hallucinations, but I'm always aware that they're not real. They're always on the surface above what is actually happening there. And so this is not, psychosis is where you don't know that you're hallucinating. Technically, actually, Harrow does not have psychosis. She knows that something is off. Asterisk, and we can come back to it later. But so it's a really interesting thing when you know something is off and you're constantly checking yourself. It really works for second person narration because you are always kind of doing that second level thought where you're like, what did I just think and why did I think it? So it actually like worked doubly well for me. So I was all in. I was completely convinced she was insane. However, when I read the Parados and read this perfect recapitulation of the scene that I knew had happened in Gideon, I went full Abigail Pent. I said, absolutely not, out loud.
Right.
And the other thing is that literally from the dramatis personae, and from the fact that Ortis was in this like recapitulation of the scene and that there was an Ortis all caps in the like lictors, and I knew that I had been obsessed with this note. I knew right away. I was like, she can't think the word Gideon, and the first, or I guess the second saint, the third saint, the saint of duty is Gideon as well. I was like all in on that. I was like, it's definitely not an Ortis. So I knew that from the get-go, but the book keeps fucking gaslighting you. As you go deeper and deeper into it, I started to get more, like, less and less sure about that initial assumption, which had been the correct initial assumption. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe that was somewhat like what my experience was like the very first time, is being like, well, that is like, yeah, that isn't how it happened. Like, why are we doing this fake history? But then you keep getting more and more evidence, quote unquote, evidence that this fake history is what happened, but it's just slightly. And so you're like, you know that there's something wrong. I did not pick up on the Gideon thing until later, like maybe like when Mercy's like tapping her head or something.
Yes.
Or like later on when
I didn't know she had done it to herself. Oh yeah, who's tampering with your temporal lobe or whatever?
Or like basically like when they say something and then they're like, who are you talking about? Like at some point, like before the big reveal, I did figure out that Ortis meant Gideon.
Yeah.
And you were like, what did you do? So it's like, I wasn't ahead. I wasn't very much further ahead of like finding out that she truly did the lobotomy and like made herself forget. But I was slightly ahead so that you're like, oh, that's what you did. But you still have no clue why you're doing this bubble thing. You're like, so what is actually happening to your memories?
Well, exactly. So like these memories that she seems to be having with Ortis are so fucking insane and so clearly wrong. And I had actually read Gideon like many, many months beforehand. So there was a big gap of time. So there's this part of me that's like, am I wrong? Was I wrong about who died first? I can't remember all their names. And like, so I'm like gaslighting myself being like, maybe this was how it happens. But also the existence of this line, this isn't how it happens over and over. It's explicit. And I really appreciate that. Meanwhile, however, Brooke, in her fucking infinite wisdom, made a poll that I did not make literally until Gideon wakes up in Harrow's body, which is that Gideon is narrating. And that's because I was so ready to experience this as like an experiential insane thing that I was missing the like direct explicit clues that are right there. It was funny too because I remember being annoyed. I was like, this isn't really how Harrow thinks. Harrow doesn't think with all of these like kind of memes and swear words and like
it's half and half. It's half and half. Yeah. I've gone through and I've started like highlighting things and being like, oh, that's Gideon.
I fucking loved that Brooke made that poll right away. Like I was goddamn genius. I have one more little just like hilarious note that I realized on this reread and not the other ones, which is that in this chapter in the Parados, Harrow says that Ortis loves alternate histories where he wasn't forced to go off and fight. And I was like, God damn it.
I know.
I was like, we all love that alternate history, Tamsin.
Oh, and I always thought it was strange that this is the only time that it seems that we see her alternate history glitch in the bubble. But this is also the only time that they say out loud to her, Gideon Nav. And she has to overwrite it. And it's her bubble resetting itself. And so that's why he says the line again.
Yes.
And she goes, what?
Oh my God. I fucking love that too, because I actually literally, even knowing everything I know, every time I read it, I'm like, oh, did my eyes stutter? Did I just skip? Like, I have to be like, no. It's written twice, word for word. Like, I feel like we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out like why that only happened that one time. And I think this time around, I figured out that the reason it happened that time is because
it's the only time. Yeah.
It's the only time that somebody says Gideon's name to her.
Yes. It's interesting
or at least
too,
that
because
we see that written on screen.
It is also, I believe, the only time in the bubble that we get the body. The body shows up with her the whole time while she's on Mithraeum. I mean, until the end. But like, I think it's the only time the body is in the bubble. And that's also very interesting. And it makes me wonder, we still don't know if Ortis didn't notice the body or if Ortis was not able to notice the body. And that made me go into this like spiral while we were talking about it, where I was like, oh my God, can a soul be inside of a brain, inside of a bubble, inside of a, like, I was like, how many layers deep are we?
There's one more thing that I want to talk about and then we'll get into their theories.
Perfect.
And so the one more thing is that Parados means the chorus and the first song of the chorus, but it also, I got to find my note and like find the exact definition, because there's another definition of Parados, and that is a bank of earth built behind a trench or a military emplacement to protect soldiers from surprise attack from the rear.
I fucking love this. Sorry, that is a fucking hardcore deep cut. Tamsin must have been real proud when she thought of that, because it is brilliant, because it's a play she's putting on, and it tells you that if you had been paying attention, which I wasn't. I was not paying enough attention. I love, even Brooke looked up and saw that it was a Greek chorus. And then I love the idea that it's actively a thing she has constructed to protect her own brain. She's trying to scrub the memories, recreate new sets of memories that can sub in so that she is protected from this. And it's ironic that actually it opens her up to more attack.
Her assumption, which is like based on truth because she is insane, And so, but her assumption that everything that goes on that she can't find a good reason for, like, it makes it just like this, what? When Abigail goes, have you ever considered that you actually might be haunted?
Haunted?
And so then it's like, actually, no, it's both things. What if it isn't just your brain?
You. Well, okay, so query. I think that the way to like think about this book is that Harrow is indeed insane because she literally has performed a lobotomy on her. Her thoughts are not all connected. She is misunderstanding her history. She does not know what's going on. The fact that that is happening because of a choice rather than because of like some automatic thing doesn't change the fact that she is experiencing mixed realities. Okay. So then we have the bubble, which is a real thing she's experiencing, but not in the way she thinks she is, right? We have the body, and this is something that I want to know your opinion on. Is real life Harrow pre-lobotomy, did she see the body?
Yes.
So she has been, as Brooke actually pointed out, like there's been a fragment of soul that has been infecting the Harrow since she saw the body in the tomb.
Absolutely. But additionally, I think that it is also true that she hallucinates the body.
Yes.
And that she sees the body when she is not actually being haunted by the body.
Interesting. So, and I have mixed feelings there because I actually I like the idea that she literally is just interacting kind of with a soul outside of herself that is real, and those interactions are real with a real separate soul, as opposed to something that her mind is concocting, that these conversations are not nothing. I think she's having real conversations with the body. So I think it's less of a hallucination.
The only reason that I think that it's possible that it's a hallucination is that I think that her hallucinations started before the body. Like, we'll have to like kind of watch for the history of like how she talks about the history of like her mental state.
Yeah, but the problem is we don't know how far back she scrubbed. We don't know how far back she had to erase because Harrow and Gideon grew up in each other's pockets. Like, Gideon is a name that should come up over and over, even in the absence of Canaan House and lictors.
But I think that she scrubs stuff that touches on Gideon, but she doesn't scrub stuff that touches solely on her. So if she's talking about her personal experience,
yes,
before she meets the body, then she's talking about the fact that she's having hallucinations and trouble figuring out what reality is before she starts being haunted, in which case afterwards it is both haunting and her own mental illness.
Yes, I'm into it. I love this. Oh, okay, this was fun. We'll have to keep track. Shall we talk about Brooke and John?
Yes.
So they started with this question that you and I are just debating now. Is Harrow insane, and who the fuck is the body? They go through iterations of who the body could be, right? They do accurately touch on it being the body in the tomb, and then they go on their wild speculations about how the body in the tomb could be Old God or Death or Nona. They also actually mentioned that it could be Anastasia, and I thought that was funny too, that they were like, the Guardian is A.L. and Anastasia's name starts with A. And I was like, you just saw the dramatis personae where there are no fewer than 3 different A names, like Augustine, Alfred, Anastasia. Like, it's not like it's an uncommon letter, but I loved it. It made me laugh really hard. It also, actually, sorry, while we're here, I didn't think of it then, but it's interesting that neither of them had questions about A.L. in terms of the fact that all of the other Cavaliers have names that are associated with their houses and they have 2 names. They don't have initials. I don't know. Like, I would have asked a question as simple as like, well, is a Guardian the same as a Cavalier? Although I would have is a strong term because I didn't in real life, but I can make my own memories too.
It's also just assuming like, he's the Emperor, he's God, he's doing stuff different. It's like, whatever. Like, obviously his shit is weird and it has nothing to do with the Cavaliers.
There's this weird phenomenon in Harrow that is something that you don't really think of, partially because in Gideon the Ninth, you're so focused on the Ninth House magic that you're thinking about skeletons a lot and you sort of forget to think about souls and revenants and ghosts. And Harrow is all ghost magic all day. Harrow is being haunted by no fewer than 2 to 3 individuals. Like, it was actually very impressive. Also, you know, Brooke says that her half-baked theory is that potentially Harrow wanted to save Gideon and found a way to do it. And that's why she's only half a lictor. And I was like, yes, completely accurate. However, she didn't make it all the way to the fact that in order to do that, she had to forget who Gideon was. So they're still waiting for Gideon to appear, right? They're still waiting for Gideon to be brought up.
How many times do you think they're going to be like, where the fuck is Gideon?
It's my favorite though, because they notice that the capitalization of Ortis in the dramatis personae, and then the fact that Ortis Nigenad is capitalized in one place and one place only in the Parados. And they talk about how they know that G and P must be somewhere, but none of them are G and P. And what they didn't do was go and look for the only P. on that list. Sorry.
And then we talked about Pyrrhus so many times. We talked about Pyrrhus so fucking much.
Oh, it's really good. And I do love that Pyrrha is the child of Pandora, the first child of a mortal mother, and is one of these last survivors that specifically has to repopulate the earth. It's all about resurrection. It's an interesting name choice. They did a very good job actually thinking about the heralds and the resurrection beast in a way that I had not anticipated. They totally clocked Stellar Revenant, so it feeds into John's theory. He's ready to go with that. I don't know. The reason I put bee skull was just because it looked vaguely like a bee skull. The heralds they clearly have that overheating power of the bees, like you sent us.
I think Augustine describes them as just the worst bee.
Uh-huh.
The way that they're thinking about the Lictor timeline is leading them so far astray.
I have a whole note about that too. I was like, the resurrection is not the same as Lictorhood. And we actually know that, again, like the math where you're like, this is not calculus. 10,000 years and 9,000 years. There's like a big gap there. But it is, to be fair, complicated by the fact that some of the lictors really were people who were resurrected and some of them were not. Some of them were from the second wave. So I'll be interested to see if
it takes a lot of digging to figure out the timeline and when things happen and all of that. Like they haven't, they like kind of are like, oh, I think that this is such and such a house. But then not picking up that the houses don't match with first, second, third state.
Right. Yeah, and they will get a little bit more of that. They'll get a little bit more clarity on that coming up. And actually at Cytherea's funeral, we will get to hear that she was from the second wave. And I wonder if they'll take anything away from that. But I didn't when I read this book the first time. Do you think the trials were set up concomitantly with becoming lictors, or were they something that were set up after I think so too. Because I'm not sure they ever planned for there to be more lictors. I think they were practicing. They're setting up challenges to practice on with one another. I think they probably practiced more than once. Harrow actually gets really bitchy in this book, and I don't even notice because the level of bitchiness is so small compared to the shit that Augustine and fucking Mercy pull out on the regular.
I think what it is like, I have such sympathy for Ortis, even though he's like a sad and squashy lump of a human.
Well, he's wonderful.
Like, why are you being so mean to Ortis?
Don't be mean to him. He came back. He's trying to do his duty. He's trying to be a bigger person and being
so good for you.
Also, he's a great poet. Stop fucking yelling about his epic poetry. That's a hard thing to do. Write 18 books of epic poetry? Fucking phenomenal. Yes. My God. That's almost twice as many feet as Shakespeare would bother to do.
Good Lord.
I weirdly am interested in Augustine. Like, Augustine has this like really dark thing where you can tell there's actually a lot going on under the surface that he is fully just numbed out and made into just this like core of empty spite. And on top of it, he's all charming and wonderful. And but also vicious. But like deep inside, I'm like, bud, you need some fucking drugs. Like I can hook you up with some SSRIs. Like I am concerned.
He's terrifying to me. He's terrifying because the way like at the very end, like we're skipping way too far ahead and I'm gonna have to cut all of this.
No.
Like, at the very end where he's just like, like God's like trying to get like the promises back of like, are you going to serve me? And Augustine's just like, nope.
And just sends the entire Mithraeum into the depths. Yeah, it's fabulous though, because again, this is like someone where you're like, this is kind of a dick, but he has fucking morals. They're just weird, interestingly aligned morals, but he's like unwilling to play this game anymore. I don't know. I think he's an interesting character. I feel genuinely sad that we do not get to meet Gideon, Saint of Duty, Gideon the First, properly. We meet him in the context of him trying to murder occasionally. Many of the conversations that are actually interesting between Harrow and him on board are probably with Pyrrha. And I can like,
except for like the weird one outside the incinerator. That's him.
I don't think it is. And I will like, his eyes are specifically described as dark during that period. Yeah. We can go back and forth. We'll dig in, but I think it's Pyrrha who's doing that. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, which is not related to this at all, so just pivot, was a really like funny thing where John was realizing, she says she's not a full lictor, but her body is still moving while she's like under. He's realizing because it moves out into the hallway. And I didn't know how to be like, Mercy drags her there to try and kill her faster. I was like, way to pick up on the details.
And then drags her. I believe that like when Gideon wakes up, she sees the smear of blood where she's been dragged after she's been stabbed. And it's literally like Mercy put the trash out in the hall to like be picked up.
Yeah. I love that you love her.
I think I just have a lot of understand. I was going to say empathy. Empathy is too strong. I have a lot of understanding for where Mercy is coming from, just simply because of my current stress level.
Yeah. Genuinely sorry, but I hear you. I get it. Yeah.
I am not graceful under pressure, and neither is Mercy. We just talk with a lot of exclamation points.
Chapter 1, Ninth House Skull. 9 months before the Emperor's murder. The sword hates you, you hide your face, you vomit. Chapter 2, Ninth House Skull. 9 months before the Emperor's murder. Our Resurrector renews the Ninth. Empty coffins, planetary revenants. You can't go home again.
Holy shit. What an incredible call that indeed Ortis the First is Gideon the First, and that Harrow's brain is censoring the word Ortis vice versa, is censoring the word Gideon and replacing it with Ortis.
Yes.
And they also, so as I said, so this was something that I figured out very early on, but I did the same thing that Brooke did. I was just like, maybe she's like suppressed it because of grief. Brooke also had a different theory that I thought was wild and incorrect, but wild, that maybe it's suppressed for everyone, that maybe like the Emperor himself is saying Ortis instead of saying Gideon. But no, he's saying Gideon. That's why the lip shapes don't match the sound that Harrow is hearing.
The fact that it's an anagram, I was like...
oh my God. Sorry, that's the one I'm most excited about. I never, ever caught that, ever. And it's an anagram for Gideon Saturn. And here's the thing. Saturn, of course, is the Roman god equivalent of Kronos, who was this titan who ate all of his children because he knew that one of his children was going to come and kill him. Right. And that's Zeus, who ends up like overthrowing him, and then you get the new gods. And I like the idea that John Gaius, the emperor, as Saturn, who's eating his children until someone can come and throw him over. And Gideon is like child of Saturn. So this is Gideon Saturn makes Ortis Nijanad, and I'm very fucking excited about it.
I do like that because I was like, I like that we can pull out Gideon, but I have no clue what to do with Saturn. And that just seems like a weird red herring, except that we know that Tamsin does bizarre shit like this.
They did a good job noticing the time delay. They noticed that actually she was able to think about and talk about Gideon in the epilogue of the first book when she's on Erebos and she's talking to God. But that now, some months later, it's gone. All of that is erased. So I think it's very interesting. And it's reasonable, again, to think, oh, this is grief causing some sort of psychological break.
But we know
never
it's not.
occurred to me that Harrow would have fucking lobotomized herself in order to do this. I love it.
And I mean, I guess that brings up, like, I did make, again, if you're interested in the Patreon.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
Basically, if you wanted to read Harrow the Ninth in chronological order, I have an order for that because essentially the Epiparados, and then I think it's like chapter 19 and chapter 22, are out of chronological order.
Marie made like a really beautiful timeline of everything that's happening because we think that, I mean, more broadly, I think the timeline even of these 10,000 years is really interesting and needs to be like,
yeah. So this isn't the 10,000 year timeline, but that's just the timeline of basically how long has it been since the first letter hits the ninth. And it's about 2 years.
The other thing they talked about was where is Gideon's soul? So beautifully, John thinks that the soul is in the sword. And
I think that the soul is a little bit in the sword.
John loves to just like keep going. So he was like, Gideon's soul might be in the sword, or maybe Cytherea's soul is in the sword. And I loved that. I was like, just keep going. Like, anybody's soul could be in there.
Just keep going. Also, Cytherea's soul, not her soul, but Cytherea's body and the sword have a weird intermingling that has implications later.
But not yet. The other thing they thought about was who is Gideon Nav, right? And I actually really loved So John is still thinks that she's God's child, which she is, and that's amazing. I love that they think that Pyrrha might be the mother because it means
Red hair.
Red. And it's also funny because actually that is like a key way that you identify who is Gideon's mother. You're like, oh, nobody has fucking hair like that except for Wake, right? Like it's a very weird phenotype.
Well, also Gideon 1 has reddish hair.
This is true. And Giddy 1, although, not the father, was having sex with the mother. So this is, it's hard to tell. Any of these things could be true. How many sperm can fertilize a necromancer egg? Who knows? We don't know. They also, so it's cute to watch them do this. Brooke was like, maybe Gideon's an ancient revived body, a la the ones that he's sending to the Ninth. They did bring up, why did Gideon's mom scream Gideon, Gideon, Gideon if the parents are God and Pyrrha or whatever it is? It's like not clear what's going on. There are two more things I wanted to mention that are a little bit like off. I don't know if they're totally off. So there's 10 bundles of discrete dead, and I have counted them. There's Cytherea, Marta, Babs, Jean-Marie, Isaac, Abigail, Magnus, Silas, and Colum, and then there needs to be one more. So it could either be the little bits of Palamedes, or it could be Protesilaus's head. And I could see either of those being true. But the way
we're told specifically that Pal is there.
We're told that there are little body parts in that coffin, but the way she describes it, she says that the 6 coffins were empty. One was totally empty and one had little bits. And so it was this weird little thing. So I think it's Palamedes as well, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no,
I'm pretty
sure it's Palamedes.
Where there's a discrepancy is she says the only one draped in third house colors is empty, and that's obviously Corona's. But Babs should be there too. So, like, low-key, this is not important, but my guess is that Babs is there but unmarked because they're not sending the lictor bodies home. The fantasy is that the Cavalier...
The Cavaliers have joined the lictors.
Exactly. So... that's there. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up,
because wasn't paying attention to the fact that Babs's body isn't there to be sent home. Of course they're not going to send it home. You have one more thing where your note says, Loki, where the fuck has he been hiding however many set aside bodies he has? In Canaan House.
You think it's just like in Canaan House in the facility?
I think it's in the facility and in the parts that, like, everybody's like, there's stuff running alongside the facility. Like, Abigail says that later when she's, like, looking at the facility. Like, there's like, parallel things. I think that everything is still there in
totally
Canaan House.
Stored there and maybe embedded in the river, which keeps it kind of prime, untouched by time as well as death. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and he also says, like, weird things about the bodies of, like, he's going to begin the process of, like, bringing them back to the surface. And it's like, so what if those souls, like, they've just been chilling in the river, but they're fine?
Chapter 3, Ninth House Skull. Harrow falls in love. Harrow goes insane. Ortis gives himself to the cause. Chapter 4, Third House Skull. 9 months before Emperor's murder. Someone tries to smother you. Maybe. Ianthe delivers the letters, and Ianthe makes a bloody point.
Chapter 5, Broken Ninth House Skull. Harrow and Ortis arrive at Canaan House. The eggs you all gave me died!
Before we do anything else, I want to say that I'm pretty sure I just took it too far. It's my bad. He knows that God's name is John. That's the thing that he thinks he knows. I couldn't help it. You were like, great analogy. And I was like,
That's where I was like, Hannah.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should not have done it. I couldn't. Oh, God.
Also, Brooke being like, why are we 16? And as soon as she said 16, I was like, wait, they were 17 last week. And then I looked at you and I was like, Hannah!
I decided because I thought it was really funny that, like, you know how Mercy every single time it's like a lower age. So every episode I have a list of what age they're going to be at every episode. Oh God, I'm such a fucking child.
It brings us joy in these dark times. And that's really all that we're asking for.
That is exactly what we need. So let's get into Harrow's state of mind and her insanity. All of the skulls for chapters in the river bubble are these like broken skulls where it's slashed down the middle. The only exception is chapter 3, which is not quite in the bubble, but it is told in the third person. I think it's her retelling to herself of her history. So it counts as her current present day memories, not the play that's going to be acted out in the river bubble shortly. But it's an interesting like discrepancy. The holes that are in her memory are super, super interesting. And Brooke and John brought up some of the discrepancies there. But part of what's interesting is the things that are left over. So my favorite is with bloodied fists and a bruised heart.
We talked about this in terms of helping us figure out the timeline.
Yes.
And basically supposing that because of things that we learn here in this chapter, that in Gideon, you get the opening of the tomb from Gideon's perspective, where you know that Harrow fought her bloody, but also there are mentions in Gideon the Ninth that they fought bloody all the time.
All the time. Yeah, that was the impression.
But that specifically, that time, she had half of Gideon's face under her fingernails, and she goes and opens the tomb, and Gideon sees it and tells the parents. But here in Harrow, we get that with bloodied fists and a bruised heart at 9 years old. She unlocks the tomb and then spends a year getting through it.
Yes.
Which suggests that every time that she unrolled the rock was after a fight with Gideon.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. So the question is like, if you break a blood ward once, is it broken forever? Or do you have to use the blood every single time?
It's not like she's going to leave the tomb open.
No.
Just because she opened it once. So for a year, every time that she has a fight with Gideon, her comfort is to go to the tomb.
The only person that like, there are two people who matter to her, right? And when one of them hurts her, she goes and visits the other one. Like, yeah, that's a really interesting and tragic insight.
I also wonder if that means that her constant visiting of Alecto, because it says that after that, Alecto only visited in her dreams. I think it's because she stopped opening the tomb, because she stopped fighting that way with Gideon.
And so Alecto literally couldn't get out to be, like, her revenant was no longer walking around.
Not walking around in the same way.
Yes. Like, you could say a part of a fragment of her soul has infected or haunted Harrow, so she's carrying that with her inside her all the time. But maybe there is no external presence anymore. I like that. Let's actually skip to Harrow's letter then, because one of the things that our newbies were talking about that I think was really fascinating was the sword. And that's one of like the key things about this is like all of the things she has to do with her sword.
I think that it's going to be so much easier for them to figure out what the hell is going on with Wake, because they've already mentioned, well, what if you can't cut flesh with the sword, because then whatever's in the sword can leave it. Yeah.
And I think actually we gave them good insight by having them read The Mysterious Study of Dr. Sex, because it made them think about how souls can move around. I actually think it's an interesting concept that potentially Harrow, who's not very good at spirit magic, would not have been able to carve out just Gideon's soul. I kind of like the idea that Brooke came up with, that some of Harrow's soul may also actually be in that sword. That there's like literally an admixture of like potentially 3 different individuals currently hanging out in the sword having tea. And I don't know that that's true, but I think it's a really interesting concept. I think they like cut to the core of it. This was the first day when John suggested that literally they may have performed brain surgery on Harrow in order to remove or rewrite memories.
You know what, John? You deserve all of the trolling that we've ever done.
The other thing he mentioned that I thought was interesting is one of the things in this letter is Harrow tells herself that she needs to bathe the sword in blood. He was mentioning that ghosts feed on blood. And I've always I literally have ignored this. I'm like, I don't know why she does that.
I know, but then I was like, well, damn,
maybe that's actually genius.
And it's even more of a hint. Like, I always took it as like the way that she has to be about the sword definitely has to do with something to do with that was part of the hint to me, but I'd never made it all the way of like why that was the hint that she put Gideon in the sword.
Yes. The other thing that shows up in the letter is the sewn tongue.
Oh my God.
What?
She fucked up. She thought that because she could feel something in the sword that she had put Gideon in the sword, and she never did.
Oh,
she thinks put a partial piece of Gideon in the sword.
Right. Well, okay, but some amount of Gideon has to be in Harrow no matter what, because she has the lictorial well of power. So like absolutely
That's true.
unequivocally
That's
some
true.
amount has to stay in Harrow. But I actually really like this. Harrow's not good at spirit magic, guys. Like, I like the idea that it may be more mixed up and fragmented than she imagines, and then that she's actually like aiming for. The other things in the letter that I thought were really interesting. So I still think it's shocking that Ianthe gets over god status. Harrow is a devout, like, loves the emperor. It's one thing to give Ianthe like hella status.
I always wondered, though. I'm like wondering a little bit more about her, the way she feels about Jod. And
this is something,
if she ever talked, like how much she talked to BOE on the planet.
Exactly.
Because the way that she talks to him, like she still has a reverence, but it's almost like, it's like a reverence for power, but not a respect born of love.
I think it still has elements of love to it. It's a love that doesn't make sense and knows it's going to get hurt. I definitely think we talked about this actually with the epilogue of Gideon the Ninth, that like she has a degree of anger towards God that almost doesn't make sense unless she knows something. And you could argue, I still think she met up with BOE at Canaan House at the end there, which would tell her stuff. But it also kind of goes to what is the secret of the Ninth House. Like, it's just an interesting concept because she definitely has complicated feelings and interactions with John.
Absolutely. Also, I love that I was struggling for a while of like what is letter number 1 that Ianthe has? It's, of course, it's the letter to Gideon. That's why Harrow can't have it.
Yeah, it's sunglasses, right? Like, yeah. We talked about how I desperately want to know what the other challenges in the basement of Canaan House were. I desperately want to know the contents of the other letters. Like, we only get to find out like 3 or 4 of them.
You know?
Yes, tell me all of them. Give me a pile of letters. I will read them stack by stack.
She never had a letter for Palamedes.
The other thing she says in her letter is that she can't go back to the Ninth House ever. And that also, I think, is very interesting.
I can't tell if I think that it's just because she can't go back to the Ninth House because she couldn't handle all of the contradiction.
Ooh, it would break
just
her brain and break the work. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Like, she would literally either just completely and totally die from brain hemorrhage because of the constant, you know, whatever the hell it is that she did, where she's like pressing on the temporal lobe she's
just like bopping herself in the brain every time Gideon's name comes up, basically, with a piece of her own bone. Like, yeah.
And that, like, there's no way that she wouldn't, like, literally go insane. So I kind of think that that's probably the simplest explanation and, like, the biggest thing of, like, you don't get to go home. It's both because you literally can't, and also, you know, you can't go home because of resurrection beasts. So
yeah. Okay. I have just one more thing. So let's talk. No, I have 2 more things. I lied. I have 8 more things. On the ship Erebos, who makes this first attempt on Harrow's life?
Jod.
Okay. That's what I thought too.
I feel like I don't think that anybody else makes sense. The only other people that it could be is Mercy or Ianthe.
And I don't think Mercy's there yet.
Mercy might not even be there yet. I don't think he would trust Ianthe to do it or to pull the punches.
Yeah. Much later, Ianthe says something about how, like, part of her plan is that, like, Harrow has to remain alive as part of her own goals. So I don't think she would do it either. Well, so the other thing is Jod pulling the punches here? He's not really trying to murder her, right? He's trying to wake up. All right.
I think that's what it is. And I think the biggest key here is every other fight that she has with Gideon, she knows that she is in a murder attempt and she remembers everything about it. Here, her memory is wiped and it's as though it never happened. And she was like, did I?
Also, oh my God, sorry. This reminds me of Kitharia with her, like, weak ass planning. Jod not bothering to clean up. He's just like, I'll just shove a bunch of crates in front of all of these fragments of nail that are embedded in the wall because I cannot be bothered. Okay,
and he has plausible deniability because her only 2 modes are power, vomit, and murder. And so it's like, oh yeah, murder attempt on Jod. She's just crazy coots.
Yes.
Crazy pants.
That's a great point. At any time. And actually, that makes you wonder how many more times this has happened. Like, this is the one we hear about. So the last thing I want to talk about is in the bubble. You mentioned to me, you think Ortis at this point knows. So he does say, at least now I possess the time to finish it, about his noniad. How much of this do you think he knows? Is he just like,
He doesn't know that something's going on, but I think that he's realized that he is dead.
Yes.
And that there's something funky going on. And there's a couple of things that he says. It's like the way that she pulls him in, she wakes up completely and totally confused because she wakes up in the bubble and she doesn't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
And he is like very much like, please, like, how can I help you? Like, what must be done?
Yeah.
Like, and then she says, I thought I was dreaming perhaps. And he says, I find it perfectly normal, and then he kind of like keeps stumbling over his words of like, you're the thing that you told me. That's what's going on here, right? Orta said distracted, the only surprise really being in and expressing this way rather than, no, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot that Ortis is thinking in that mumbled, like, jumbled paragraph that he's not saying out loud.
Because he's like, I don't know, like, how much I can push at this without losing my soul.
And actually,
and so I do think that it colors his basically, I don't expect you to understand basically the weight of all of those years or to like get it the way that I do. And he's not talking about the fact that he's twice her age.
No.
He's talking about the fact that he is dead and he now has eternity, perhaps in this bubble with her?
Or in the river. But either way, just a forever to like weigh him down and draw out his humanity and leech away his soul. Chapter 6, 8th House Skull, 9 months before the Emperor's murder. You meet your elder sister. The Saint of Joy forces the Emperor's hand. God plunges you into magma. Chapter 7, 6th House Skull, surrounded by bodies. You do necromancy in the river. God pulls you out.
Chapter 8, 4th House Skull. What? Why? Harrow receives a keyring. Teacher gives a history lesson. The sleeper in the facility.
I'm very proud of my face for not moving.
I am also proud of your face. There's always so much. There's always so much every week. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's just go through the very beginning. Yeah, John says that Gideon is the child of God and someone else. And then Brooke says it's actually Gideon,
Ortis the First and
Ortis the First /
the
Gideon
commander
and the leader
of the rebels. Like, and it's so
Which
fucking
is what
funny.
Gideon
They're
thought.
so dead on. Oh, that's exactly what Gideon like was for sure convinced that like it was his baby. But I also love that they each have one parent correct. Like, there's something so beautiful about that.
And then they're like, oh, it's the sword. The sword is number 5.
Yes. Okay, so actually, let's hold on. First I want to talk about the timeline. I'm so proud of them for figuring out that 19 years ago a special thing happened, tying it to Gideon's birth. Amazing. One thing I wanted to ask you, there's a weird thing, actually, the last time that Mercy and Sarpedon met was 20 years ago. And I was like, interested. I mean, it's maybe I don't need to read into everything, but I think it's an interesting thing to add to our timeline because I don't know.
If we're going to wildly speculate, I am going to say that Judith is Sarpedon's daughter, and Sarpedon is somehow mixed up with the Lictor bullshit with BOE, and Judith finding out that her own dad is actually involved in rebel shit. And
that's going to break her.
Is going to break her or radicalize her.
You're right. That could go column A or column B, but that's very, very interesting. And it's super interesting that 20 years ago they met, and then maybe a year later, Mercy and Augustine and Jod have a threesome that ultimately will create our Gideon. That's fucking wild. Yeah. And then, okay, so the other thing you mentioned at the very end of the section that we read this week, it says very explicitly that there are 5 points of light. And we know who 4 of them are, right? They're Jod and Mercy and Ianthe and Harrow. And our newbies think it's the sword. I think it is effectively the sword as well, but I want to know if you think it is Wake or Gideon.
It's Wake.
Okay.
Because
I just think that there's like, there's an interesting way it's described. It's
frustrated.
4 points of light and 1 down below. So it like, there's so many different things it could be here.
My reason for saying that it's Wake is because of the it's crying. The somebody's crying.
So you think it's Wake that's crying?
Yes. Because nobody else hears it.
Yes, but that's part of why I was like, is this Gideon? Is this the body? Is this the, like, someone is crying who has an intrinsic link to Harrow, but Wake does not seem like the kind of person who cries out. On the other hand, I don't know that Wake has ever been dragged physically or in any way through the river.
At the back of the shuttle, you thought you could perceive a high and keening wail at the very edge of your hearing, but neither God nor the elder lictor, and certainly not Ianthe, reacted to it. The wail was coming from within the shuttle. It had a hard, pained edge to it, like frustration.
Ooh, that does sound like Wake.
And then it says, like, you're trying to figure out where it's from. There's another wet thump as a fourth body slams on, but you focused on the thin cry of violence.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'll buy that. That all does sound very Wake-like. I had interpreted someone's crying as like crying out in pain, crying out in fear, but the second you add in
that the frustration
violence,
and pain and like fear and violence, I think all of that is Wake, but I also think it's because that is a revenant that is only stuck to an object. Gideon is like Mercy and like Ianthe. Like, Loveday's soul is not going to be crying out. Nibirius' soul isn't going to be crying out. Gideon's soul isn't going to be crying out because they are merged and they are protected.
Yeah, except that Gideon's soul is a whole other, it's just a whole other can of worms that we don't know enough about where Gideon's soul is. We think it's partially tethered in Harrow. It's partially tethered in the sword.
But it's more similar to Gideon and Pyrrha.
Yeah. I like this as Wake. I like this as Wake a lot. I just think that, like, Gideon is a weirdly unknown quantity.
I agree that Gideon is a weirdly unknown quantity. I also think that Harrow's melding with Gideon is protecting and bringing Gideon's soul along for the ride in a body, in a way that Wake's soul is not, in a way that Wake's soul is like having to cling to an object.
I didn't think about that. That, like, through sheer power of will force, Wake is doing what Harrow is supposed to be doing, which is holding her soul in her body, and Wake is holding her soul in the sword with, like, every ounce of willpower that she has. It's not something that's been magically tethered there.
Yeah, because otherwise she has to be ripped off into the river.
I also wanted to talk about so a couple other things. One, the Mithraeum, where we first ran, myself and my remaining 6. One of our number was dead already. Another had been removed from play. Anastasia was removed from play. I think that's easy. Dead, I actually had initially put Cassie here.
I don't remember who dies first, and I don't know if we get it until, I think we get it later in this book.
I don't know that it's explicit. It is notable that, you know, Cassie has leftover recipes on the Mithraeum in the kitchen. So I don't think it's Cassie, but I think it's an interesting thing. I'm trying to, like, keep track of the little glimmers we get about the lictors. And we do know that Cassie dies. It's a real focal point of these chapters, except that I don't think that she is dead. And I have a couple, like, more and more, I am all in on this. She is supposed to be the best at this. She is supposed to be the one who is brilliant at the river, who knows how to move things in. Like, Augustine has spent time making up that deficit for the lictors, but Cassie was the one who was brilliant about moving things in and out of the river. They say no lictor has lasted longer than 7 minutes, and Cassie was the one who set that, like, time record, and then she was theoretically ripped to shreds by 10,000 feral ghosts. But that's a report coming back from Mercy, who was in projection, not there physically, and on the shore, not in the river. And Mercy says exclusively that she saw when they seized her legs and arms. Here's my hot take. My rampant speculation is that Cassie actually fucking worked out something with a bunch of ghosts, made a pact in the way that Harrow will basically make a pact later in this book, and that they intentionally dragged her down to a stoma. I think she's on the other side. I think she fully physically transported herself to the other side. That's my insane rampant speculation on Cassie. It's also notable that chapter... So it was interesting. Brooke, like, caught that chapter 8 has a fourth house skull, which I think is specifically because it's the only one where the fourth house teens actually show up until much later.
Yeah.
We can debate that. But, like, the chapter where they're in the river and Harrow is seeing all these ghosts and stuff, that chapter is a sixth house skull. And I think it's all about Cassie. I think that's an important thing to think about, all we learn about Cassie theoretically dying in these chapters. The Steelies and the obelisks are really fucking weird, and I'm not convinced that she has figured out what they actually do yet. But One thing Jod says is that they have less to do with travel than they are to do with transmission.
Yeah. It's like a fax
That's
machine
a
for the
fucking
river.
Weird thing to say. Yeah. I was like, is this like when people talk about teleportation, like, are you destroyed and then just like copied in the other place? Is it still the same you? Does that mean anything? Like I think it's a really fucking weird and interesting question. I would love to meet someone who's traveled by Steely like a bunch of times and see if they are like kind of decayed soul wise.
Yeah. A little weird and a little fucked up.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the thing that I love so much about the river bubble chapter is just the very strange way that it flips everything about it.
Me
right?
too.
That it's Ortis who makes the prayer. And she's like too kind of discombobulated to be able to talk about it. That when they are giving the keys, it explains it in a way that I'm like, yeah, that's how it felt to read it, where it's just this confusing welter of like names starting with Marta the Second, right? And you're like, yeah, that's how it felt. You were like, I have no idea who these people are, and I don't think I care, right? And like they're getting given this object, right? But it's also disrupted. So I keep on like, I'm going through and just like noticing every single thing that's wrong and incorrect, and it's making me crazy. I can't believe actually our newbies are like not talking about it yet. They're talking about these chapters without asking whether they're real or not, or trying to describe if they're a dream, or because the discrepancies drive me fucking insane. So like they get given a ring with a key on it. Yeah.
Right? Like just these little things that make me absolutely bonkers crazy. And Ortis hands it to her, whereas Gideon keeps it. Like it,
At the end, it makes it like just even so clear that at this point, all of the ghosts understand that they are trapped there because of Harrow. They don't know why. They don't know what's going on with Harrow. They do understand that they're dead. And they understand that they're trapped there with Harrow. And they're like, okay, cool. We'll just play along. And it's the way that the teens act. It's the way that Abigail makes her joke. It's the way that Teacher makes his joke. Like,
I'm so fascinated by Teacher in this book, because Teacher is such a weird thing. It's like, how is he even there? He's multiple souls joined into one, but he's being drawn back anyway. And he's giving information that is Teacher specific information that he wasn't supposed to give the first time around. He's lost a lot of the fucks to give. He's like
no fucks.
I don't even care anymore. We're all gonna die. Goes off capering into the hallway screaming.
Yeah. And then Ortis looked at her with his steady dark gaze, and his heavy face flickered. She realized with an electrified astonishment that he was exasperated.
Yup.
You never did possess an imagination.
I fucking love that one so much. That line is also tells you everything you need to know about the river bubble, actually. It's a line that, like, I hope we remember to go back to when we tell our newbies about this. Like at the end of this book, because it's this moment, Harrow does not have enough of an imagination to be making up memories like this. Harrow doesn't have the imagination to be living anything other than what is real. And there's so many even callbacks. So my favorite one, there's a pause after something Teacher says, and everybody stands there while the pause awkwardly falls down the stairs and lies in a tangled, crumpled heap at the bottom of the stairs. And it's described almost fucking identically, like disturbingly identically to how Abigail and Magnus die. Like, it's constantly calling back to what really happened, and then remarkably calling ahead as well, right? The foreshadowing is absurd. There's a part where Harrow says, unless you can conjure me the spirit of Matthias Nonius. Yes. And I died laughing. And there's a part at the very end where she says, in the worst case scenario, you can simply declaim to it, which ought to cure anyone's insomnia. And she's being bitchy, but that's literally the worst case scenario happens. And Ortis starts declaiming and saves the fucking day.
I know. Ugh. I know. I love it. Are we already there for like foreshadowing?
Yes, do it. Tell me all of them.
My other foreshadowing is, I really love the line that Mercy starts arguing with Jod, right? Like right out the gate, he says like, this looks remarkably like forcing my hand, Mercy. And she gets really pissed and says like, you can't say my name in front of them. And he was like, what do you mean I can't say your name? Like, they are lictors now.
They're also lictors.
Like, get over yourself. And, he says, you know as well as I do that keeping your name from your rightful sisters is ridiculous. Also, you are trying to start a fight with me to get out of the fight I am trying to have with you, which is a painfully domestic tactic. And I believe that she says the exact same thing back to him
Or
later
to
on.
Augustine, but it happens later. Like exactly a painfully domestic tact. It's exactly.
Oh, yeah, no, it's her and Augustine, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like lines that they say to each other all the time, like for the past 10,000 years.
I think you're completely right. I absolutely love that. It's perfect. It goes along though with this thing where like Mercy says almost the same thing to Anthe that she says to Harrowhark. Like they just have fallen into these patterns that are solidified and just like ground into, their granite. Like they, the other one actually in that same part, there's a moment when Harrow says that it was clear that God was like, there was a complicated power dynamic. And
Said
there's
you
a part
who
later,
has a complicated power dynamic with your lictor sister.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, Tamsin's having so much fun with us in this book. She's just giggling behind her hand the entire time. And I do not resent her for it.
Another thing that I always love the little things where it's like so obviously that it's Gideon peeking through. And there's really only one super duper obvious one that I can see. His lictor stood also, her hand twitched aside, blobbity blobbity, to rest on the end of a simple and unpretentious rapier. The handle unadorned and uncomplicated, no decoration other than a white knob at the very end of the... You didn't know the exact technical word. It was a pommel, though.
The fucking running joke about the pommel is amazing. It's like, my God, I can't, like, it's not that fucking hard of a word.
It was the pommel, though. And it's so funny to like listen to it. I think if you listen to it, it must be so much easier to catch on. Because the way that Moira Quirk says it, she was like, you didn't know the prior thing. It was a pommel, though. And then she keeps it.
It is amazing. Gideon can't help herself sometimes. She's going to make commentary. Yeah, she should.
Chapter 9, 7th House Skull. 9 months before the Emperor's murder. You attend a funeral. You meet your big brothers. A resurrection beast is coming. You finally catch the name of God.
Chapter 10. Broken 5th House Skull. Abigail shares her research. Harrow flees the 5th. For all that, I'll make you suffer.
Chapter 11. 7th House Skull. You spend your first night in the Mithraeum. Stabbing courses. Well, just one corpse.
Shall we start with our junior's dissection of the note?
I don't know that I have a lot to add. They are going to be so confused.
Well, okay, so here's the best part. They have pulled apart some of the most important spoilers that are coming up. Mm-hmm. Like the idea that Gideon is the child of God, the idea that this is potentially, these eggs are human eggs that can, fertilized by God and are being implanted. All of this fucking genius. Deep cut. Brilliant. They do not know that Wake exists. They literally do not know that character exists yet.
Yeah, so there's no way.
Yeah.
What is it just in this episode? I've already forgotten that I texted you because I was so mad at you.
Okay, which was hilarious. Sorry, I got that text and I was like, oh, I didn't know I did anything. I literally, that was one that was not intentional. Usually when I'm like making fun of John being God and whatever, that is me being a dick. And I was like, I don't even know what I said this time.
I think it was something about like Augustine.
Oh, no, that's right. Okay. So we also recorded today a bonus game for our patrons. And Brooke was saying that she thinks Ianthe would be best friends with a cool guy slouching. And I was like, and he probably has a cigarette. And I was like, but I was thinking about I was like, she does like Augustine because he's like.
No, as soon as she starts describing who Ianthe would hang out with at high school, it's Augustine.
It is Augustine. Thank you. I'm so glad we were on the same page because that is exactly what I was visualizing. Oh, that's good shit.
Yeah. No, and then you're like, yeah, and he'd probably smoke a cigarette. And I was like, Hannah, you can't do this to me. I don't know what my face is doing.
Can we talk about this? It's so fucking funny to me because they were like, these chapters were really slow, but I'm sure they're going to speed up soon. And I was like, nope. The reason we're doing 4 next week is because it's relatively slow and we just got to fucking get through that so we can get to the action.
Nothing happens most of this book.
Yes.
So much, you're learning so much, but nothing happens. And I feel like that is how Nona feels on the first read, is that nothing happens. Even though there's so much happening, it's just that Nona doesn't give a shit about it, and so you don't understand.
This is so funny because this was just not at all my experience reading Nona. Okay, so I do want to ask you this because I want to talk about Wake and her power at this point in the book. So one thing I noticed actually is that, and I forgot to bring this up last time. Last time, the like flashback sequence that happens at Canaan House where they have their first tea party with Teacher, the skull for that is a fourth house skull. But it's not just a fourth house skull. It is a whole fourth house skull. It's not broken. The broken skulls start here. There might be one broken skull before this, but I didn't know if that was an error or not. But one thing I thought about was like, maybe it's only a broken skull if it's being haunted by Wake. And like by the end of the bubble, Wake wakes up, they do an exorcism, and Wake is virtually all powerful. At this point, Wake is still leaking through though, right? Like Commander Wake is leaking through in terms of these notes that are very real thoughts and feelings that Wake is having.
Did we get a note last time in the bubble in the fourth house chapter?
No.
Yeah, so maybe that's what it is.
So that's, yeah. But it's interesting because like we know that Harrow did this temporal lobe like surgery, did this lobotomizing on herself a while ago. I don't know when Wake starts to haunt her, but I think it's during that process. I don't think Wake was always haunting Harrow necessarily. What do you think?
I think Wake is there haunting her the moment she touches the sword.
Okay, from sword onwards. That I believe. I like that.
We just got a text message from John saying, "Motherfucker, we were right."
About
right
what?
About what? What's in the next chapter
you know what
that
it
he's
is?
right about?
The very next chapter is the planet that Mercy takes Harrow to kill a planet. And that was one of John's speculations was that they were killing planets in order to, yeah, I think that's it.
I want to point out, because I think we've talked about this before, but I have made a timeline.
Yeah.
So the timeline isn't perfect in this book, and I don't know how much of it is Tamsin lost track and how much of it answer it.
John is calling me.
Put him on speaker.
John, you're on speaker.
Are you guys still recording?
Yes.
You motherfuckers.
Which time?
Which time?
I just got to the part where, I mean, maybe Marie can blur this out, but we stuck a sword into a planet and killed it. We were so right. Oh my God. We nailed something. Anyway, I'm 2 pages into the reading and I was like, motherfucker. So anyway, I figured this would be good for team content.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, cool. Have fun, guys.
Bye, John.
Bye. That was impeccable timing.
Oh my God, that was good. I'm gonna cry. Okay. All right,
what were you talking about?
You were telling us a little bit about their timeline. Yeah. Yes.
The next chapter after this, actually in the timeline, is like chapter 19, which is the first murder attempt from Ortis.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because there's like, it basically flashes back to the first time that
there's a flashback within the flashbacks. So like if you're reading this chronologically, you read chapter 19.
That's so fucking bonkers. She's such a crazy person. She's all over the place in this book. This actually, in terms of like, oh, this goes very slowly. I've said this before, but for me, it intentionally parallels the structure of the Noniad, where like there's a lot of talking and any fighting happens very quickly. And a lot of talking and a lot of talking. And then it's like, you like learn a lot of things, but it's like a slow read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we get out of the bubble, I want to just mention some of the Easter eggs that I thought were the best this week. So my very favorite is Abigail saying, "I'm really at my best when people are not alive." And I'm like, yes, you are at your best right now. That is why we love you in this book.
So funny.
When Harrow is talking about her cavalier and what a cavalier should be, she says she is a warrior. Mm-hmm. And Ortis says, "I'm glad I never became that cavalier." And that's really good.
And
but the last one...
What?
The last one I really liked actually was that Harrow says that, they're still at the door of the tomb and its rules hold clear. And that for me was interesting because Harrow is dictating the rules of this entire show. Yes, her rules do actually hold clear and they hold sway. You don't get to go against her rules. That's what's making this play happen. Okay. back on the Mithraeum, I fucking love this funeral. I love the insight into the lictors. And you have some stuff here about like the timeline and thinking about what it was like in the original lictor era. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I was just talking about like timeline things. So then if they're saying that there were 16 to meet them at the dock, then that means that Kith and Loveday are the last to join. Everybody else is there. It's Jod and Alecto, and then the 7 other pairs.
Yeah. Before you jump past that, I actually think that that is such a great little Easter egg spoiler that no one notices. Again, with the numbers, where like if you actually count up the numbers, there ought to have been 15 God and 7 pairs of lictors. And then Kithray and Loveday are the last pair of lictors. You forget, like, Alecto is not something that Harrow knows about. The idea that God had a cavalier is the fucking big boom takeaway for Mercy and Augustine at the end of this book.
And I was thinking from the way that they phrased it, the other thing that we learned from that is that maybe Valency and Anastasia are both from the 6th house.
Interesting. Why do you think Valency is from the 6th house?
Let me pull up the sentence.
Because it says Valency and Anastasia were with us by then.
Yeah. Augustine asks, was she first gen or second? Second, said God. Early second. We were still experimenting with getting the 6th installation up and running. Some of the houses were empty. Mercy Morin spoke up, no, we had it running by then because Valency was with us and Anastasia.
Interesting.
So I read that as meaning that that was what was keeping the timeline straight in her head, was that Valency and Anastasia were from the 6th. And so that meant that by then
because the 6th house installation is that's believable. I don't hate that.
So it's not like smoking gun, but that's how I interpreted that, was that maybe they were both, which means we don't know where Cyrus came from.
No, I mean, we don't know enough about like anything really, but these are good speculations.
I think the other things about like timeline things or kind of like what's going on, I do think it's interesting that it said that Mercy says, I never saw her cry except once the day after when we put together the research when she became a lictor. But my rampant speculation is that it goes, Augustine and Mercy try, Pyrrha and Gideon do it their way, and it goes strange.
A little bit weird, yeah.
Or it could have been that Anastasia tries and gets stopped, and then Pyrrha and Gideon do it their way. And then everybody else does it more or less normally after that.
Yeah. We know the order of the saints with the exception of Anastasia because we don't know, everybody else is like the first saint to serve, the second saint.
We don't know when Anastasia does it. And so that's why I think that Anastasia's potentially the first to try even before Augustine and Mercy. We don't know when Anastasia tries. We just know that she stopped.
So there's a moment when Mercy mentions basically the fact that, she's like, I always thought it was weird that Anastasia failed under laboratory conditions when I was able to do on-the-fly scrambling. So Anastasia at least was doing it in like a very systematic and set up, like the research was all there, it was ready to go kind of way.
You could also read that as maybe Anastasia tried before them. Like, but that's again, like we don't have any, like there's no information about when Anastasia tried.
Yeah.
But that's my rampant speculation is that Anastasia tried at least before Pyrrha and Gideon did.
Okay. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. You have this other key thing here that I'm really glad you brought up because I don't know the answer. They reference all the time Gideon's mission. Like Giddy the First.
Giddy One's mission, and that, but don't you think he knows about it because he's very interested in what?
Right, and it's a weird thing because I'm sitting here being like, of course, we know that he had this huge mission to track down Wake, but that was 18, 19 years ago, right? Like, what has he been doing since then, and why is he still invested in BOE?
And what's his mission, especially where they expected him to be at the Mithraeum, and it's freaky that he's not.
Yeah. That's interesting too. But I mean, oh God, the lack of communication.
So what was he doing? You also get interesting things about the timeline, or not. I don't know how useful it is, but you get stuff about the timeline with Cytherea because it says that Augustine saw her last 10 years ago, but Mercy only saw her 20 years ago.
There's a lot happening in the last 100 years that we need to know about. And then there's a lot of like bigger picture timeline things that have been happening. One of the things they say here explicitly actually is that they chose long ago they chose years ago to increase their numbers, right? That means the lictoral trials that Harrow is part of were something that was planned way in advance. Why did they wait? Why did they choose now? Was it literally just for the optics of it being in the myriadic year of our Lord?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but I want to know what made them choose to increase their numbers, what made them choose to do it now. And then because Cytherea uses that lictorial trial as her attempt to, kill the emperor, was she the one pushing to have a lictorial trial so that she could literally set it up where all of the big bads of each of the houses were there together?
Or were they just waiting for the timeline to be okay for what the scions of the houses were? But it also seems like they don't pay that much attention. And I think that these conversations, when they're talking about oh yeah, when was the last time you talked to him? They're talking, I think part of the reason for these conversations is to make you feel not just to keep pointing out 20 years ago, because that's an important timeline, but also to make it feel 10 years ago was yesterday. 10 years ago was a month ago.
That's true. That's a very
they're
good point.
just on a different timeline than the rest of us. And so the fact that they haven't seen somebody for 10 years is oh yeah,
I saw him Friday.
See them? Yeah, I saw him Friday, I think.
Yeah. I haven't seen him since Friday, though, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Marie, what do you think happens when a lictor dies? No, I just genuinely, I feel like it's such an interesting thing. I don't know why they actually are able to kill lictors, really. Cytherea gets stabbed and turbo cancered, and then is gone, and also Loveday is gone. And I don't know the details. I don't know how these things work. Meanwhile, Wake had to be killed both in Soul Land and also in Body Land.
Yeah, I don't think that I understand how it works. I think it's how Teacher is a bunch of souls.
Yeah.
But they do come apart in the river. They are distinct in the river, but
although,
still attached to each other.
We're going to have to talk about what we think, eventually we're going to have to talk about who we think Teacher is in the bubble. How much of him is accurate and intact and what we expect. Ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Frontline Fifth is a Locked Tomb podcast conceived by Mariana Mako and starring Mariana Mako, Hannah Grenwald, Brooke Anderson, and John Ryan. Our cover art was designed and created by Mariana Mako, who also edited this episode. Our fabulous music was composed and recorded by Blake Anderson. Sonia Grenwald designs our killer merch. Hot. Gorgeous. The Locked Tomb series is a completely dope-ass book series by Tamsin Muir, who does not know we exist and is in no way affiliated with this podcast.